Welcome to the Mada and Hugh Piano Duo podcast. I'm Hugh.
I'm Mada, and we will continue the interview that we started last episode with Professor Lambert Orkis. So for this part two, so we divided the interview into three parts. For this episode, Professor Orkis shares his experiences post-Curtis. So after he graduated from the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia, he shares his adventures with the famous cellist and conductor Mstislav Rostropovich. And what surprises me all the time to see in him as a musician and a human being is that perseverance and relentless pursuit of anything that drives his interest, that of course pursuit of music. I like when during our lessons, what I have taken from him, among other things, is that word travels. So all the time be as prepared as you can be, because you never know when someone is going to hear you, so you have to be at your best. Doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what you play, doesn't matter who you are surrounded by. Just do your best.
It's interesting to think about what questions were going through my mind. I remember when I was getting to my last lesson and my last days at Curtis and getting ready for life beyond Curtis, after Curtis, and what do young musicians do? And it was fascinating to hear his particular journey, how he was able to carve his musical career immediately after Curtis. And it's just fascinating to hear, and I think it's a good way of analyzing how he was able to find his musical success, as you said, through persistence, but also excellence.
Yeah.
And just being prepared to do whatever needed to be done at a moment's notice.
Yeah.
And not letting that, not letting any insecurities hold him back, but just going forward. And, I think of so many music majors that are finishing their school years or maybe their whole education and thinking about what life is like after school. And this is great to listen to get some advice in terms of how you can apply his life journey hopefully to your own career as well, because I think a lot of his life lessons are applicable for any music major.
As I was listening to him, I remember when we shot the interview, the same question was going through my mind. Okay, well, I'm going to graduate very, very soon. So what am I going to do? What my life is going to be like after? So
let's go ahead and continue with part two of our interview with pianist Lambert Orkis. And then you graduate from Curtis. What happened after that? I remember I was in an existential crisis. I just thought, well, I'd spent all this time at Curtis. Now what?
Yeah.
Other musicians, violinists, cellists, orchestral musicians, they have more or less a road or a path to, audition for orchestras or other large ensembles. There are more job openings for pianists. It's really what you make of it. Did you have that moment what happened after Curtis? And I guess our next questions will be more along the lines of
what happens next. Yeah. I come from a family that's not worldly wise about these matters. No. So I was stumped, but I had an experience at Curtis that kind of guided me. We had a fabulous counterpoint and theory teacher, Matthew Colucci.
Yes, I know of him.
Okay. And in form and analysis class, he played a sonata. I don't remember which sonata of Chopin it was, but he played, for stylistic and structural reasons, Chopin sonata. The sound of the piano was so beautiful. The person who played it was so remarkable. I asked Dr. Colucci, yes, Lambert, who's the pianist? He looked at the recording. His name is Marion Filar.
Mm-hmm.
And I went home. I would always go home from school being very excited about what I had learned. I liked school. I didn't like tests, but I liked learning. And my mother, who liked learning, was always wanting to hear. So I shared with her. I said, well, it was this person by the name of Marion Filar. Oh, I know that name. because she always followed the reviews. He's in Philadelphia. And he's famous for his playing of Chopin. Oh. And she said, well, you know, he also teaches at Temple University. Ah. I thought about this, because that was a sound I didn't have, and I didn't know how to get. And we didn't have any money. There was no fancy school on the horizon. I thought, well, and my brother had gone to Temple with a music education degree.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
That's right. And he used to talk to people about me. So I thought, well, maybe I should go and look into this. And I did, and I was accepted. Of course, I was a little bit, well, I come from Curtis, you know. But Mr. Villar, he kindly took me, and I thought I'd just breeze through things and just learn. But no, he was very, not only was he good with Chopin, he was wonderful with Mozart. And I really needed that, about how to structure and get the right kind of clarity and use of the pedal. Learned a lot from the man. So that got me into this door here at this institution. And one day I am sitting in class, and Dr. David Stone, who was the founder of the College of Music, came to me. Lambert, I understand you're good with ensembles. I had a piano trio in Philadelphia. And I had played in Orlando Cole's cello studio at Curtis.
Yes, Orlando Cole was a very esteemed cello teacher in the Philadelphia area.
That's right.
Both at the Curtis Institute, but also at back then, the New School of Music, before they joined forces with Esther Boyer.
And I played recitals with his son, David Cole. And we formed a trio with John Toth, a violinist who is unfortunately now deceased. And there was a woman by the name of Marianne Van Erck, who had an organization called Franklin Concerts. And she would arrange for dates throughout Pennsylvania in universities for youngsters who are just fresh out of school like us to play. It was a wonderful experience. So I had ensemble experience. So Dr. David Stone comes up. We understand that you have this experience. The person who is playing for recitals is going to Europe on a Fulbright scholarship. We need somebody. Would you take on this position? I had never had a job before, and this was actually going to make money. So I said yes, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into. The first year of doing this was a graduate assistantship. I had to play for 47 people.
Oh my God.
I must have been 20 or 21.
Wow.
Yeah. And I took it all very seriously. I was introduced to new music. Look, if you're going to play for tuba players and brass players, you're not going to be playing Brahms.
No, of course.
You know, Hand to Myth was sure. I went through all those sonatas.
Yeah.
Even there's an English horn one.
Yes.
I remember doing that one. Wow. So I got a lot of experience. And what is it? People usually graduate with 30 credits for a master's program. I had over 40. They kept me on an extra year because I provided a service.
Yes.
So what happened next? It was just circumstances that the Vietnam War was going. And the dean called me in one day and said, what's happening next year? I said, well, it's either I find a job someplace or it's off to the war. He says, why don't you stay here? It was an offer I couldn't refuse. And so that got started. So half my job was playing for the recitals. The other half was teaching secondary piano.
That's how Eleanor Sokolov actually got started. She started off just teaching secondary piano.
Right.
Before becoming one of the major piano faculty teachers.
That's right.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow.
And over at Presser Hall, there's room 1. It's way, you could get lost going there. It's way off in the corner. I remember having a violinist who recently just gave a huge bequest to the university for a violin scholarship, Desi Alston, with the National Symphony Orchestra. He would help me move the upright pianos into room 1, and he would take lessons. It's like class piano. Yeah, I had to work hard at that.
So you got your teaching chops,
collaborative playing chops, all here, really, at Temple.
Temple, yeah.
That's right. I tried to play the recitals to the best of my ability. Back then, my eyesight was better, and when you get older, things slow down. But I was a good sight reader, but I didn't leave it at that. I really wanted it to be as well as I could do it. So on a regular basis, my wife and I, she was also a Temple person. I met my wife here. She worked in the administration, and we would have it down to a science. We would get here early in the morning, and then she would stay with me while I played the recital. We were able to leave this university and get down to Chinatown, eat dinner, and be back within 1 hour.
Maybe we should do that.
How efficient! Wow.
Yeah, it was very efficient. We knew the place, they knew us, they knew what we wanted. Bam, it happened. And it went on that way for years. And if I wanted to work on, so we say, sophisticated music over and above what I was doing, that was late at night. Just did it. And my playing attracted attention. It just simply did. There was another Temple person by the name of David Barg, who's a flute player, who had founded a group called the Philadelphia Chamber Soloist. So he had asked me if I would be part of that group. Those days, I was just happy to have a performance opportunity. So I said yes, and once again, did my very best to do as well as I could. That's how I met the music of George Crumb. Yeah. I heard it in concert, but the first time I had it, Vox Polini, Song of the Whale. David Barg had hired Barbara Hafner, who was with the Philadelphia Orchestra, and we did performances of that. They were lovely. She liked the way I played. She was also working with Richard Wernick, with the contemporary players at the University of Pennsylvania, where you had George Rockberg, Richard Wernick, and George Crumb all in the faculty. They needed a pianist. They were unhappy with whoever they had. So I went, did my best. They liked what was there, so I stayed. Barbara migrated down to Washington to a new group called the 20th Century Consort. And they had 5 concerts their first year, went through a pianist for each of the first 4, and not happy. So I came in with a month's notice. We did Schwantner's Elixir, we did the Schönberg Chamber Symphony, and 2 other works. I forget what they were. They liked it. I kept on. I did almost nothing but new music for 11 years.
Oh my goodness.
And on one of those occasions, I was asked by Lauren Kitt, who was the clarinetist of the group, who went to school at Curtis when I was there. He was my senior by several years. But we were making music together and having a good time. And the principal winds of the National Symphony Orchestra were doing a concert at the Library of Congress. They thought it would be nicer to involve piano. So they asked me. And so we did the Poulenc Sextet. But most importantly, a work by Glinka, Trio Pathétique, for bassoon, clarinet, and piano. And in preparation for this, Lauren turned to me and said, our maestro at the National Symphony Orchestra at the Kennedy Center gives master classes for members of the orchestra. Would you mind coming in and doing this Glinka piece, because it is Russian? I said, sure. I came in, and other members of the orchestra were playing. I remember Brahms' Opus 8 and thinking, well, I think I might play it differently than that. And the maestro was talking in metaphor. If you remember, Madame Sokolov talked in metaphor.
That's the Russian approach.
And I understood what he was talking about. Other people were a little unsure. I came in and I said, I'm just going to play. And we went through it, at the end of which he comes running over to me and just gives me this gigantic bear hug. From that point on, my life was changed.
Now, who was this incredible maestro then?
Yes.
Mstislav Rostropovich was the greatest cellist in the world.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, I think there were over 80 works written for him. He had to leave Russia because he supported some freedom of speech. Solzhenitsyn
Sure.
had gotten into trouble with the authorities, and Rostropovich wrote a letter to Pravda, the major newspaper in the Soviet Union, defending Solzhenitsyn. Slava, as he liked to be called, meant glory in Russian. Said, "You Americans think that Siberia is far away." When he did that, when Rostropovich did that and supported, his concert touring ended. He was sent to 2,000 miles east of Siberia. He had to play concerts in little villages, traveling by dog sled with accordion player and singer.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, oh my goodness. He understood what hard times were. But he had a feeling for people who were passionate about music, and that I certainly was all the time. So, okay, it's a master class. Those are lovely. Then one-off things, you meet the person and off they go, you know. But a little time later, I get this call from the personnel manager of the National Symphony Orchestra. "You know this guy, Rostropovich?" "Well, of course I know this guy." "He would like you to come with the orchestra on tour in Asia as orchestra pianist."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
"When is it?" "Once a month from now." I've always given a lot
At
of
least you get a
advance
month's
notice.
notice. That's
Yeah.
great.
I've never done anything like this.
Playing in an orchestra.
Right. Of course I said yes.
Wow.
Have to be bold sometimes. Yeah. And so we went there, and ever played second Prokofiev symphony?
No, I haven't done that.
The piano never stops. It's just like all over the place. We did one concert once in Japan, and it was decided maybe this is not a good idea, and then we didn't do it again.
Oh.
But we did Shostakovich Fifth Symphony and some other things. And at the end of the tour, I get called into the conductor's suite and whatever that I think it was in Korea actually. And he said very nice things to me. Yet I would like you to become a member of the orchestra. Yeah,
But you also had the tempo job.
I did. It took 2 years for that to happen because you just can't create. It wasn't a position. They wanted to make it a position, which they did. And so, okay, that 2 years later, and the school temple was generous enough to say, okay, well, I'm still considered full-time faculty, but I'm not really full-time.
Yeah.
It was a cut and pay, fine, but that's what happened. The school was always supportive of this.
That's wonderful.
And so I started just as a member of the orchestra. Then one day, the phone rings again. I think I may be getting the timeline a little bit askew. This may have occurred before I was actually in the orchestra. And it was the general manager of the orchestra saying, you know, Rostropovich is doing a concert and would like you to play with him. When is it? In 3 days.
Oh,
What's the repertoire? Well, it's 6 pieces. It listed them. There's only one I had ever played. The other ones I barely knew if I knew them at all. There was a cellist here, Hirofumi Kano, who I used to play concerts with. I was friends with. He was a Japanese national and a fine cellist. I called him. I said, "Hey, Hiro, do you have this music?" He said, "Yeah, I got it. Here."
So back then there was no online
No,
websites
no,
to
no,
INSLP.org to download music, right? You had to find the music physically, yeah.
So they gave me the keys to Slava's apartment. Go in and practice until he comes. And back those days, the Concorde was flying. And then I got this phone call when I was in his apartment. Well, the Concorde broke down. He'll see you the next morning. The concert's on Sunday. Next morning, Sunday. There's a matinee concert of the orchestra. Okay, fine. Then there's a master class he's giving. So time's going by, and I'm realizing, hey, when are we going to rehearse? So I decide to go to the Kennedy Center, and he sees me and smiles and waves. And then we get into this big black car, big limousine. He says, now we're going to play for the president. I said, yeah, the president of the board, the board of trustees of the National Symphony. Oh, no, the big chairman of the board. So we're driving into the suburbs of Maryland, and as we approached the house, it was Leonard Silverstein, who was the chairman of the board. I see all these black cars, and I see these men in black suits with things hanging from their ears. I said, the President of the United States? Yes.
And you hadn't rehearsed.
We hadn't rehearsed. It was President Reagan, members of the Cabinet, Supreme Court, and Congress.
Oh my goodness.
They were going to come in 20 minutes. So in 10 minutes, it was a 20-minute recital with short pieces. So in 10 minutes, we did everything double tempo and pianissimo. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah, we should do that.
And there it was. And we played through, and I'll never forget when we did Elfintons. You know that Popper Elfintons.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He did something to me which he never did again. I'm getting the music out, and he just starts.
Oh, no.
I learned later he used to torment the pianists that played with him back in the Soviet Union. And they were not going to do that to me again. He never did, because I was ready to go. He would run out on stage for the Brahms F major sonata, and we literally run. I'd toss the music, and as soon as my tush hit the bench, boom! Not kidding.
But that has an effect. I mean, it's
people were
the
shocked.
music. Yeah, of course. Of course.
For 11 years, we played recitals. And we would be together a month at a time. The only time we weren't physically together is when he was sleeping.
I mean, that's the kind of real partnership in music. That's the kind of real duo, and you get to know it. Yeah,
people heard it. We never played in Europe, but throughout Asia, South America, North America. Yeah.
So he never go back to Europe while you were playing together. So for 11 years.
There was some reason other than political.
Yeah, probably.
There was something. I'm not quite sure what it was.